Hi, my name's Rashid Kopwal. I'm sitting here with Elizabeth Mulheron. Elizabeth is a spiritual physician and healer and offers professional and personal life guidance with an intuitive approach. Liz has been working with people in this field for about 10 years and has some very interesting stories to tell. And I'm sure you're going to enjoy this conversation that we're going to have for the next little while. So welcome, Liz.
Thank you very much, Rashid. The reason I got into what I'm doing is because of a marriage breakup. And I was pushed to an emotional point, was either start taking a little white tablet or end up at Cumberland. So I decided to start looking at myself. And I had two of my boys have really bad eczema. Well, it's a lot better now, but when they were young. And so I went on a drive to try and find out what I could do to help them, but it was actually trying to help me as well. And it's funny how these things happen. And so I helped myself, didn't help the marriage, but that's, was obviously never meant to. But in the process, the more I worked on myself, the clearer I'd come, and then I was able to help others. And the turning point came when a girlfriend of mine was doing an aura reading class, where you get aura is the colours you can see around people. And I went along, and there was myself, my girlfriend, a guy there who was a father of four, and the teacher. Anyway, we meditated, and the guy stood up there, and the teacher said, "Oh, what can you see?" And I said, "Well, I can't see any colours, but I described it as a shadow standing behind this guy." And so as I started to talk, this shadow came forward and turned around and shook this guy's hand. And I knew I could, I've got all the senses. The only sense I haven't got is the taste. So I knew this was all coming around, and I was trying to learn how to deal with it, but I wasn't prepared to go into that sort of mediumship stuff. Anyway, so I was describing what I could see, and then we changed the conversation. And then this guy started talking about his motorbike, and he mentioned the motorbike. I started to have a fit on this chair. I started to cry, and the shadow disappeared from the waist down. Anyway, I said to this guy, I said, you can't get on that motorbike. And I could see what else he could do, so I was giving him some guidance along what he should be doing, or what the heavens want him to do. Anyway, so that stopped, and we started on another subject. And then as I was sitting there, this shadow came and sat on top of me. And in my head, I'm going like, this is just too crazy. Like, I'm going loopy here. So I'm asking the shadow to get off me. And this voice said, I heard this voice say, "Could you please tell him again, Elizabeth?" And I said, "I've told him." He said, no, he hasn't heard you. You need to tell him again. Can you please tell him? And when you talk to the spirit world, they're very polite. Please, thank you, and all the rest of it. So I did. I stretched to this guy, and then this shadow stood up, turned to me and thanked me, and then walked back and stood behind him. And the guy said, "Who do you think it is?" And I said, "I believe it's your guardian angel coming forward. You are very much at a crossroads," and he was in his life. And I said, "And they're obviously wanting to go this way, and they're trying to push you in that direction a little bit." And after the session, I got him to come. My girlfriend was stunned. She said, "I've never seen anything like it." I learned nothing from that course, right? I can describe auras. I don't see auras. So what I got from that course was helping that guy. And I went home, and I've got a niece living with me, and I said to Amanda, somehow I have to work out how I manage what I have, because I'm obviously here to help people. And that was a turning point that made me go down the avenue, is how to manage what I have and show others or help others in a unique way. And that was the turning point.
And you could say that you needed to be on that course to meet that guy and
to have that realization.
Have him give him that message. I mean, that could be another way of looking at it.
Yeah, and it was the start of, it's like anyone, when you sit and talk to people and offer guidance, you hope the right guidance is what you deliver, whether you know it or not, consciously or subconsciously. So I've always done that. I've always attracted people, and I've helped them in whatever way. But now I understand why. And I constantly do a lot of work on myself. I see some type of healer once a week to keep myself very clean and clear. Because one of my girlfriends, when I said I was going to do it, she said, "Liz, can you do me a favour? Make sure you look after yourself, because people rely on you, and you don't want to turn around and say, look, I need to have 6 months off because I'm not coping." And so I do everything I possibly can to keep myself right. And the more I do that, my ability becomes clearer and I want to say stronger, especially with the healing aspect. And so what I do is I combine when I sit with people, whether they come to my healing room or whether I'm sitting in the boardroom chatting to people, it's a conversation and we talk about what's happening with them and how I can help them move forward in their life, whatever it is. And if they're having dramas with work, we can pinpoint why. You know, and it's funny how a lot of people, not a lot, because I don't come across a lot of people who boo-hoo what I do. They're usually quite interested, and you generally can pick something with someone, they go, well, she wouldn't have known that. And then they get intrigued. And then when they walk away and they feel so much better and they feel less stressed, then they go, well, something happened. I can't explain it. And, you know, so as soon as people experience it, then they go, okay, well, it's made a difference. I'm going to keep going down it. I mightn't tell my mates at the pub that I'm seeing Liz, but you know what I mean? So, and the reason I've sort of gone more into corporate is because of the stress level there.
Okay. And how do you find the reception in corporate these days? Because I know, 20, 30 years ago, spirituality in corporate wasn't something that was talked about. I mean, it could be mentioned, but I think in the intervening years, it's become far more open, if you like. So how do you find the reception generally? Well,
I find that I've gone into it purely because my clientele has changed. So it's not just, other healers, it's a lot of business people coming to see me and a lot of males as well. And I've been fortunate enough with some of my clients wanting me to work with their staff. And it's interesting because I go in and then I sit down and talk to the staff, and quite often they're not keen to talk to anyone because they assume I'm going to ask them about their performance. It doesn't worry me about their performance at work. It's just a conversation to see where I could help. And it's quite interesting that most of them accept it. It's trying to get the right person in the right position, because there's always a gatekeeper, and women are open to this, but getting them to push it through to the male at the top is very difficult. So I've met quite a few people. I remember meeting this lawyer. He was a gorgeous man, 7 foot tall, and I was doing some work with a friend of his, and this friend of mine said, oh, look, go next door and talk to George, because, you really need to have a chat to him. So I sat down and he sort of sits back in his big chair and he goes, Liz, he said, to tell you the truth, I'm a very logical man, and if it's not in books, I don't believe it. And I said, well, that's fine, I like people like you. Anyway, so I was able to talk to him about different things and pinpoint a lot of things that resonated with him, and in the end, he said, I can't believe, Liz, I'm saying this, but I think I've just had an awakening. I said, you have to give me a hug now, George. And so, he will in time give me a call, because there's a lot of his staff that were away because of stress leave that he needed help with. But it's getting him to go, okay, I can help and get me in there. Do you know what I mean? So it's a time thing. Most of them don't go like that straight away. It's getting to work with them, and then they get an understanding of and go, well, it's really made a difference to me. I'm going to see what I can do, how she can help with my other staff. So, and it's quite interesting. I work with some CEOs and they just have to mention a staff member, and then I can tune into that staff member and say, look, this is what's happening with this woman. The reason she's not listening to you is because your approach is too harsh. You're talking to her like a daughter. She's not your daughter. Don't talk to her like a daughter. Talk to her like a colleague. So come in from a different angle. Once you give that understanding to the manager or the CEO, they come at a different angle. They get the result they want, and they go, wow, that really works. Because not everyone is the same.
No. And if you treat everybody the way you are, you need to treat them the way they want to be treated.
Yeah.
Okay.
And once you start working that shifts, and you find the energy within the office will shift, you'll have some people actually leave, because if upper management is shifting to be more ethical and being true to yourself, and therefore if you're true to yourself, you'll be true to your customers in whatever field you do. Some people can't cope with that, and if the change isn't for them, they'll leave and move somewhere else, which they need to move to anyway. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then what will happen is that position will be replaced with a person that will be aligned with the organisation.
Okay. So, effectively what you're saying is, if you want somebody else to change, if you change first, then they will change. They inevitably have to change.
Otherwise they'll move on.
Yeah, they'll move on, and sometimes it can be a good thing.
Yeah, it can be. And it's like any relationship, and I've certainly noticed that with what I do is, when I shift, my 3 boys have to shift with me, whether they like it or not. But it does change your friendship circle.
Yes,
some will drift off, and I've learnt not to chase it. They'll drift, and they'll eventually come back if they're meant to come back. But then new ones will turn up that are sort of in alignment with you, which helps you grow as well. So it's a hard lesson to learn, and can be a lonely one as well. But within an organisation, if you have that understanding, if someone leaves, someone more in tune with you will arrive, then it takes a worry out of who you hire as well a bit.
Okay, that's interesting. All right. So would someone call on you, for instance, if they say, look, I'm looking to hire somebody and I've got maybe 2 or 3 candidates here, and I'm not entirely sure which one. They're all equally competent, let's say, okay, from a technical point of view. Would that be something that you would come in possibly? Have you ever been asked?
Very much so. I have been asked to do that before. I've actually got a lady in recruitment, and she'll quite often ring me and we'll have a chat. But because I can pick up whether they're stayers, I can pick up their strengths and their weaknesses, and therefore once the employee is aware of that, they go, well, okay, yeah, I can cope with that, or we can manage that. And I can quickly pick up whether they're going to stay long term or not. Okay. I can say, look, they're going to be there, but they're not going to be long term. But if you want them to fill a spot for a year or 2, yeah, you're right, but you're not going to get 5 years out of them. So don't invest too much. And it's interesting, I had a chat with my sister. She's a physio and she has a practice in Cronulla out that way, and it was her practice, and as it's gotten bigger she's taken on 2 partners, and she was talking to me yesterday. She said, I'm really angry with myself because I hired this staff member and trained her all up. 7 months later she's left, and she said, I used to be so good at picking staff. I said, but Trish, you used to because it was your business. You have 2 partners, you don't have a say as much. So you may not want that person, but if the other 2 want them, you'll hire it. So what you've done is you've lost that intuitive value. You can't use it. And she goes, oh, okay. So, but it made her realise that's why. It wasn't her, it was because she'd given some of her power away and she wasn't in a position to make the final call.
So, have you ever been wrong with this?
I want to say no. Some things take longer than I'm not a big fan of giving out 3 months, 2 months. Like I'll give it a rough, but as a good friend of mine always says, Liz, it's always in God's time, and God's time is a little bit different to our time. I sometimes say, well, God needs faster running shoes because, but to me, if I can see it and the information comes forward for me to give, it will always happen. And I had a conversation with my youngest, he's 8.5, and they all play hockey, and they've only started this year and they've all really excelled in it. And he said to me, Mum, I want to play for Australia. And he plays in the under-11s. He's fantastic. And I said, okay. I said, I can actually see you all in blue, whether that's blue for the school, whether that's New South Wales, because I can see you all in blue. He goes, okay, well, if we get to blue, that's New South Wales, so I should get to Australia. And I said, but Ethan, you still have to get off the lounge and coach and train. Just at this moment in time, I can see the blue. If you don't do what you have to do, that blue's going to disappear. And he goes, oh, really? And I said, yeah. He goes, but you're always right. And I said, yeah, I'm always right, but you still have to pull your weight and do, you know what I mean? So it's all, and I say that to clients. I say, I can give you the guidance. You walk out this door and you can go, no, I'm not going to do any of that. And that's your choice. It's like if you go to any doctor, if you go to a physio and they say, do these exercises and you'll get better, and you go home and go, no, I'm not going to do it. You're not going to get better. So we all give guidance in our own special, unique way. It's up to the individual. So I want to say I'm pretty much on the mark. I haven't had anyone come up to me and say I'm wrong. Quite often I get people come, and even at school I talk to the mums, and I'll all of a sudden give them some, they're having trouble at work, and I give them some advice, and I'll see them 3 months later and they go, everything you said happened. I said, oh, really great. And I like that because once I give the guidance, I forget about it because it's not my stuff to keep. But it also, I like people when people tell me what I've said has happened, because it confirms in a logical sense, what I do isn't a whole lot of crap.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
And I know that's important as well.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, because otherwise people can go, oh, this is just fairyland.
Yeah.
So when did you first realise that you could do this for people or get these sorts of messages and really understand what they were and what the importance of giving the messages were? Because not everybody's going to want to receive them.
No, not at all.
No. So how do you decide? So I guess there are two questions there. One is, when did you realise this? And then how do you decide that somebody would actually be open to receiving the message? And what happens if they're not?
Okay. I've learned the hard way. I had a girlfriend, and we had a conversation. I pretty much told her what, was given to me, and she didn't like it at all. And she didn't want to hear it. She wasn't ready to hear it. 12 months later, she was ready to hear it. So we're still very good friends, but my friendship was Debbie's there for a while, and then I went, wow, I've got to keep my mouth closed sometimes. If the guidance comes forward to give someone, and they're quite happy to hear it, I'll continue. But if they go, I say, look, but if you want, my opinion's my opinion, you don't have to take it, and sort of step back as if I'm just talking from a different level, not from the guidance that's given to me. And sometimes I just get the message they don't need to know it yet. And so I step back. And even if I'm in a session and I can see and sense things, and I can see the picture, but they say they don't need to see the whole picture, just tell them this bit. And then I'll tell them that bit. Sometimes there's just a curtain and they just say, you don't need to know about it, just help them get rid of the heaviness on their shoulders. You don't need to know anything about it. So I do that. And it's funny when I say that to people, I say, look, they're just telling me I just got to get rid of the heaviness. It's got nothing to do with me. You can see in their face they know exactly what I'm talking about. And they appreciate that I don't know what it is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's through harsh lessons on a personal basis that I've learnt where to keep quiet. And I've done a lot of work on myself. Like only recently, I was getting ready the boys ready for school, and I just lost the plot. They weren't doing what they were told, but I dropped them off at school and I sat in the car and I went, that's not me. There's something not right. Sure enough, the client I was seeing first thing that morning, she was really quite edgy, and I'm thinking I've picked up on her energy before she's even walked in the door. So again, I've gone and seen my therapist I go to and say, look, that can't happen. I can't pick up on someone else's emotions until they walk through the door and are in my room or in my presence, because I can't have it affect my personal life. So I did a lot of work around that to protect. There's a lot of it is learning to protect myself and my boundaries. And having strong, clear boundaries, and again, that's something I've had to learn to do.
So what is your process for setting up the boundaries and the protection?
Protection, a lot of it is angelic. So I ask the angels. Archangel Michael's my favourite. So he comes in and protects. And if I sense something's not right, I just ask. I sort of say, look, back off. I'm not. I'm not ready. I'm mum at the moment, and I don't need that. And they go, that's fine. And it's interesting when you communicate with the above. At first I thought that I just had to deal with whatever they were giving me, but I learnt through the process of talking to people and lots of education is that the heaven, and it could be the universe, it's whatever people refer to as heaven or God, everyone gives them different names, is they want to work with me as a team, as a partnership. For me to be able to help others, then I have to understand what they're saying. If the information comes in too quickly, or it's not easy for me to understand, I can't deliver the message I'm supposed to. So I learned very quickly to say, look, I want clear, sharp, easy, no matter of facts. I want it easy to understand so I can deliver it, because I'm not a researcher as such. If I'm going to put something on LinkedIn or any other devices I use, I go, okay, this is the message I want to put across. Google a couple of pictures, one will pop out of me and go, okay, that's what I'm putting in there. And they do make it very easy for me. I'm very also in tune with animal life. in the sense that, you know, I'll ask for help and guidance, and I'll say, look, you know, can you send a rainbow lorikeet on my walk this morning sometime, just to give me confirmation that you've heard me and you're going to help me. Sure enough, I'll go along a walk and a rainbow lorikeet, and I see that as a sign that I've been heard. And anyone can do it, and it's really fascinating. And I teach a lot of my clients to start asking for little signs that you've been heard, and you say, okay, you want a white feather, and if you get the white feather and you go, oh, I don't know, it could be just luck, say, look, can you send me another one just for confirmation? Sure enough, you'll get another white feather in unusual places. So it's not as if you're going to walk under a tree where there's a whole nest of birds.
Yep, sure.
But you could see one on your front doorstep and you go, well, that's unusual, or an unusual type of feather. So there's lots of, you know, asking for help and then asking for confirmation that they've actually heard is a really good one. And I remember once I was driving to Auburn actually, and I asked for help, and I said, look, I want a blue BMW 6 Series, right? Because that's my dream car when the boys are older. And so I'm driving along, and I stopped at a set of lights, and this blue BMW pulled up in front of me, but it was a 3 Series. I went, no, I want a 6 Series. Right? So I took off and I turned down the wrong street, so I did a U-E, and then again as I went to pull in the lights, the same blue BMW pulled up in front of me. Oh, and I'm after a 6, and I got this message saying, you need the answer in 10 minutes, we don't have time to find a 6 for you. I went, okay, all right, I'll take the blue, you know, so I went, okay, sometimes I be a bit too picky, but little things like that. So it's quite a fun game once you, and I have to say, what I do, I take serious, but I don't, in the sense that I'm very lighthearted about it, and it's about teaching people little techniques and tools that they can use and practice, which is quite fun, and it helps them, so you keep doing it. And, you know, a lot of it is you can share with others. I remember I had this male client. He was a big ex-footballer, a big buffy bloke, gorgeous man, and he rang me one day. He was in a bad space, and I said, look, you've got to go hug a tree. And he said, well, actually, I went through the forest and I was touching the leaves. I said, no, you have to hug a tree. He goes, Liz, I can't go hugging a tree. And I said, no, the logical way to hug a tree is to sit down, put your back against the tree, and even hold a book so you pretend you're reading. That's how you can hug a tree without people thinking you're crazy. He goes, oh, I think I can do that. I said, well, you do that. Little things like that, because, you know, what I do is a bit out there. Some people love, other people go, oh, it's a bit strange. But if you can show them ways to use it without appearing odd, it works for everyone.
So what would you say, say 2 or 3 things that, you know, somebody listening to this could do as little tools they could use, they could take away, that are relatively simple, that they could just do, and, you know, without being too out there. Yeah, we can have a conversation about being out there later on. But
no, that's right. Simple is always being grateful. Okay, so every prayer or any wish is always granted. The only thing we don't have control over is the time. Okay. And when something happens and you wish for something or ask for something and it happens, always say thank you. And that could, you know, again, if you believe in, you know, elephants run the show, you say thank you to an elephant. If you think it's God or Buddha or whoever it is, you just say thank you. And if you don't know who to say thank you, just say thank you. I really appreciate it. And the more that comes. The thing with the universe and the angelic world is they love being asked. And I've explained this to children. It's in my head, and when I go into my head, it's a bit like Walt Disney, and I understand why he comes up with such beautiful movies. But is they tend to sit around waiting for help. They want to help people, and they can't help unless we ask. Okay, and once we ask, they run around and they can always work out what they need to help us. But some people have said to me, but I've asked for this and it's not happening. And I said, well, maybe it's not meant to. Not, you know, what we think we're meant to do. Like, I never ever dreamed that I would be doing what I'm doing today. And it took a lot of heartache to go through to get to where I'm supposed to be. But then I look back now and I understand why all these things happened. And once you go through anything through life, and I suppose that's as we get older, we become wiser, is we can look back and go, okay, we stuffed up here and we stuffed up there, but this gift, we got this gift at the end of it. If we planned that, it wouldn't have happened. So the biggest thing is when you ask for help, always say thank you whenever it comes. And also, if you've got someone that's passed over, and I've got a father and 2 brothers that are passed over, and as hard as it is them not in be here in the physical sense, they can create miracles that I couldn't do by myself. So for people who, and we all have someone we know that's passed over, asking them for help. And your loved ones up in heaven and will run around and get who they need to help you. And I find also, which a lot of my clients struggle with, is if they have someone passed over that they didn't have a good relationship with. You know, they might have had a father that was abusive for whatever reason. Generally, and I want to say 99.9% of the time, that person who's passed over is now in heaven, can look at down from above and realise their wrongs. They will move mountains to help that person, even though that person may not believe it. So I quite often say, you know, whether you like him or not, you could have hated him as a father, but he wants to help you, so ask for his guidance now and he will move mountains for you. And it's quite interesting, and that shifts that person, and that hatred they've been holding on to, or that anger that they've been holding on to for so long, will vanish, because now they can see where the help can come in a different form.
Okay, so a couple of questions there. I mean, what's your concept of heaven, I guess, is the question. Where do angels come from, or do we not even need to really know about that? Does it really matter?
I'm Catholic, and my boys go to a Catholic school. There's lots of things I believe, lots of things I question, so sometimes I sit in mass and bite my tongue. But anyway, heaven to me is, everyone has their own concept. You know, I'm very much in the angelic world because I can sense them, and so I have that understanding. But to me, it's a place we come from, and I believe in one God, and the God has many names.
Sure.
Okay, we're all made in that image, so we all have the same ability to help others like he helped. With what I do is helping people with getting rid of emotional baggage and pain and stress and all that, is written all through the Bible. You know, I believe it works, and it does work. Everyone has their own beliefs. So if you believe in whatever you believe in, and it works for you, and it's for the highest good, and it's all love and intention, it's fine. It doesn't matter whether you believe there's God there or not. But the same goes for if you're full of hate and anger, and that's what you give out, that's what you'll get back. And all religions, they all come from the same. There's someone above that all wants peace and love. It's just we tend to screw it up a bit as it comes down the track, and we're all guilty of it. You know, like I can get angry and say things I shouldn't say, just like everyone else.
Everybody can.
But it's turning around and saying, okay, I stuffed up, I accept that responsibility, I'll try and not do it again. And if you do it again, you go, well, you know, keep trying.
Keep trying. So, do you, for instance, believe everything is preordained?
In your own mind, you know, everyone thinks differently. If you have a vision in your head that you want to be an author, or if you want to be a singer, or if you want to be a street dancer, whatever it is, and you can sense it in your head, you can see yourself doing it, you can put the feeling and passion into it, you can achieve it. Okay? You have to put the effort in, like most things, but I'm a big believer in, if you really want something, visualisation is a huge thing. And children do it all the time. Okay, so you can sit with a bunch of kids and they will invent their own game, and they'll come with that. You ask them to do something, they'll go, oh no, we won't do it this way, we'll do it another way. And you go, wow, why didn't I think of that? They live in their heads, you know, a beautiful imagination. As we get older, we tend to lose that, but it's still there. We all are capable of doing that. So if you want something in life, or you want to have a type of relationship with someone, If you visualize it, it will happen. And what I tend to do is say, okay, this is what I want to achieve. Can you please bring forward the people that are able to help me?
Mm-hmm.
And you'll bump into people.
Okay, so my question there would be, okay, so we all want to do certain things, or you may want to be a rock star or whatever, but I guess my question really is, you have the Buddhist philosophy of fate.
Okay.
And the Hindu philosophy where it came from originally.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Buddhism is an offshoot of Hinduism at the end of the day, and reincarnation, for example. And interestingly, the Christian Church, which was of course the Catholic Church way back when, believed in reincarnation until about 600 AD, when one of the popes decided that it wasn't kosher to do this.
That's when I bite my tongue.
Okay, so be that as it may. All right. There is also the concept of, are you familiar with Carolyn Myss?
No.
She's written a whole bunch of books. They're very interesting. I'll probably fish a couple out for you. But she's one of the books is on sacred contracts. So basically, you have this sacred contract that you have with, before you came to Earth, about the things that you're going to do, the things that you're going to learn, the people you're going to meet, and those people will come into your life one way or the other.
Yes.
Okay? At certain points. And no matter what you do, this is going to happen. Okay? And it's not that you don't have free will. You absolutely do have free will. Yeah. It's what happens when these things happen, though. That's where your free will is. Yeah. So I'd be interested in your take on something like that.
I have to say I agree with her. Mm-hmm. So what happens is you're born and you're this beautiful little baby that's precious and beautiful, and you are brought with a roadmap of where the heavens want you to go. Mm-hmm. But then free will kicks in. Mm-hmm. So it becomes your choices. Okay, therefore what happens is all the roundabouts appears, the side streets appears, life lessons appear. And then generally, if you're right off course, then what your game plan was to start with, the day you arrived, something will happen in your life to make you stop and think. Whether that's a marriage breakup, whether that's a car accident, whether that's being redundant, whether your whole world falls apart for whatever reason, whether you might think you're on the track to being a superstar in football and you stuff your leg and you can't play again, so that you have to stop and think. The universe is very good at making you stop and think when they want to, and if it's not a little car, will be a bigger car, or be a semi-trailer, and then you'll stop and you'll go, what the hell has just happened? When things like that happen, that's when you reassess what's going on. And you start looking around, are you happy? There's lots of people, you can go through life, and life's so busy now that you don't have time to think whether you're happy or not, because there's, you're constantly on the move. Once you stop and think and say, yeah, I am happy. I'm happy with myself. Everything I do is for the best of everyone around me. I can say I'm a nice sort of person, and what I do is I love doing. Then you're on the right track. If you sit there and say, I actually hate what I do it because I have to, I don't want to do it, then you need to sit and just think, okay, what is it you want to do? And I'm not saying if you're in a job, leave your job and go and do something completely different. If you want to do something and it's, say, art, and you've always loved it but you haven't got time for it, make time for it. And then you might find that you start doing artwork and it comes naturally. When you do stuff that you love and you're meant to do and it's your passion, it comes very easily. And then you start doing artwork and then you start gifting it or selling it, and people really enjoy it. But it's sort of, that's where with our life plan is, if we keep not seeing the signs, we end up getting to the end and not achieving what we're meant to. But then what happens, I believe, and everyone else is different, is that you die and you come back to heaven to learn the lessons again. And whether I'm right or wrong, I think that you keep coming back to learn all different types of lessons and having different experiences in life to get to the final stages where you end up to a choice whether you want to stay up there and help or come down. And I look at my mother, for example, she's 89, closest thing to a saint I've ever met. And I've always said that. She's a beautiful woman. She's had lots of drama in her life, but she always has faith that everything will be okay. And I just think we all have choices, whether we make the right one or wrong one, and that's what drives, we're the driver. So, and I always say it's quite interesting with what I do. I say to people that I ignite the light we have within us. And we're all born with a light. In my head, it's like a little candle. And then during our experience, we either put it out ourselves, or someone else might put it out, or might dim. Some people fortunate where they have a road where they've been having very intuitive people around them, and they've been able to protect that light. I quite often ignite that light in people. So it brings back their passion. It brings back what they're meant to do. The really wise ones come back with 2 lights in their chest, because they know that one's going to be put out, so they have a reserve. And they're the children that you see and you look at and go, wow, they've been here before. They just seem to know. And I know with my experience with the children coming forward now, there's so many more that are autistic, dyslexic. They look at the world completely different. My belief is they're here to help us all shift, because they're all having special needs. So what's happening, the education system has to accommodate for that. So you're having a whole generation of adults looking at new ways to help cope with and teach these children. So it's changing the way we teach. So even though we look at these kids that are coming through with all these problems, they're actually a gift to us, because it's making us look outside the box.
Well, I mean, I know of a couple of people who have Down syndrome children, and they all say it's the greatest gift that they could have been given, because these children, you know, those children really show what love is.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're like, you know, not, you know, they just have the instinct. They love someone. They don't care what they look like or what they've done. You know, it's like, I've never really, like, I shouldn't say that, but children are extremely loyal. And, you know, Down syndrome or children that have that sort of disability, they don't care. They feel the love, they show the love. And they could be anywhere in the world and they'll show it. They could be in a public place and they'll show it, you know. The average child will step back when they're about 16 because mum wants to give them a kiss and a hug after their football match. A Down syndrome won't.
No.
Child won't. They're beautiful. And what they bring out in people around them and their carers is the love that the carers didn't know they had.
Okay.
You know, so we all have our special uniqueness, but children are amazing. And, you know, it's just taking the time to actually ask children their opinion, rather than, like, as a parent, you're constantly telling them what to do. It's when you stop and go, okay, we'll sit down and have a conversation and see what input they have. And then they're amazing. And the ones that with the disabilities, the way they look at the world is really, really unique. So, you know, they're a gift to a lot of us.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the more unusual cases that you've had. Obviously, no names, no factual.
Yeah.
But interesting things where somebody's been drawn to you, or you've been drawn to them with some, and the results. You know, what you found, what the results were, or what their lives are like now.
Yeah. Well, I met one lady. I was doing a course in Queensland a while ago, and it was a 4-day course, and I hadn't met her during the 4 days. And then as I was leaving, I was chatting to her, and for whatever reason, I said, look, you know, here's my card, and we exchanged, and we didn't live that far away. She was from Virginia as well. And I said, just take my number, because one day you might need to give me a call, so just give me a buzz. And she rang me 12 months later, and she was having a very difficult time with her daughter, who was going through drugs and a very hard time. And so we met for coffee and had a chat, and I was able to help her, and in turn her daughter now has been seeing me, and now she's not on drugs. She's a typical 20-year-old that, you know, will push the limits and the boundaries, but we've been able to work together to help her with stuff that was going on that was making her being drawn to the drugs and the scene she was. And it's funny, this mum says to me quite often, if I didn't spend that 5 minutes talking to you up in Queensland, I don't know where we would be today.
So did you work with the mother?
I worked with the mother to start with, and then I've worked with the daughter. I've also worked with lots of people that she's recommended a lot of people to me. But then I started working with the daughter.
Okay. So what did you do with them as such that you could put a finger on that could have guided them in some way? And I'm interested that the daughter was even open to this, given it came from the mother.
Yeah, I think it's more once she spoke to me, and I have on my business card, I have a photo. And I believe that when you look at someone, generally you'll get a feel whether they're going to help you or not. And I always say, and even with men, like I'll give them, it's interesting, I'll show you, I've got 2 cards. I've got a girl card and a boy card. Okay. Because men and women look at things differently. If I handed my girl card to most males, they'd go, this is crap, and throw it in the bin. They look at the male card and they go, yeah, this looks interesting. Okay. And when I work with males, I quite often say, look, give this card to your wife. And they'll go, oh no, I don't want her to know. And I said, yes, she'll need to know, because when you start changing and treating her differently, she needs to know why that's happening. Otherwise she might think you're off having an affair or something. Okay. So she needs to be brought into the loop. So I'm very much, if you're helping develop yourself and those closest around you, you will shift and change. They need to be made aware of what's happening as well. And, but yeah, no, she was open because the mum was at a loose end, and I said to her, I was doing some work with her to cope, and I said, get your daughter to give me a buzz and I'll have a chat to her over the phone. So I chatted to her over the phone. She could sense, I brought up stuff that was going on with her, and she was open to it. She said, look, I'll give it a shot. And she came and see me, and we haven't looked back. I even was speaking to someone yesterday that contacted me and asked what I did, and I was able to help her with stuff that was going on at that moment in time. And she goes, how do you know that? You can't even see me. And I said, well, if I'm meant to help you, the guidance will come forward to help you. So, just what I tend to do is I sit and I talk to people, and I open, it's like, I want to say my head opens up and all this information comes down, and I 100% trust in any guidance that comes forward, and I don't question it. And I'll start rattling and talking, and I'll stop and I'll go, did that make sense? And I go, yeah, it did. Good, because it didn't make sense to me. That's because it's not for me. It's not meant
for you.
So that's what I do, and that's where trust comes in. And people say to me, oh, how do I trust, that I'm giving a friend advice? And I said, well, if you're giving your friend advice and it's coming from your heart centre, which is all about love and looking out for your friend, and you're not getting anything in return, or you're just getting the friendship back, I said, you just got to trust that you're giving the right advice. Because we all do it. Even when you hug someone, you may not say something, but just that embrace will help that person. A handshake, a look in the eye saying, now I've got your back, you okay? They go, oh, okay, someone's watching out for me. It doesn't have to be a lot. And what I do is I sit down and chat. I say to people, I love what I do, because it's just talking to people and helping them. And they always walk away feeling better, and I know my job's done. If someone rings me and says, oh, look, I'm not feeling any good, or I'm feeling worse, I'll sit on the phone for 2 hours and help that person, because my role is to make sure everyone feels better within themselves about the situation, or has a game plan of how they can move forward. If I can't provide that, then I don't charge, or I'll keep helping that person till I get something that we need for them.
So let's just bring this back into a business context, because I suppose a number of your clients are in business, or business owners, or professionals.
Yep.
A lot of them would be males.
Yep.
How do you overcome that initial skepticism barrier, or the fact that, I'm talking to a what? You're talking to a psychic or a medium? Are you crazy?
Yeah.
How do you get past that initial resistance, if you like, that initial skepticism, so they're even open to listening to you in the first place? Because, if they've put up the barrier in the first place, then not much is going to happen, and you're just going to be saying stuff, and they're going to be going, yeah.
What I find is people will try and put up a barrier, but if I'm meant to get through, I'll get through. And the thing is, I don't look crazy, like I got one normal head. I don't have, 2 or 3 heads.
Well, you don't look like a gypsy. Let's put it that way. No offense to gypsies, but
I don't look odd. So I can pull off the corporate world in a physical sense. But when you sit with someone and you start talking about them, and people get it. And the sense is, if you sit down with someone and you go, oh wow, I'm feeling really creeped out here, you'll go to the toilet and not come back. Okay, but for whatever reason, and I don't know why it is, but generally when I sit and talk to someone, and I don't generally they don't run off on me, and they'll ask questions. And I know you have certain people where you don't mention angels, you don't mention God, and all the rest of it. So I get the guidance be very clear cut on this one. Don't mention the fairy stuff, and then you'll get someone else. And they'll go, oh, they love the fairy stuff. And you go, really? Doesn't look like it. You know? Yeah, they do. And then you start talking about that, and you could have this big, buffy guy, and he's right into meditation and yoga and all the rest of it. And so he totally gets the other side. So I'm very, I get good advice from where it comes from on how I approach each and every person. Okay. And I don't know that until I sit down with a person either. You know, the approach is very different with everyone, and and just one other thing with if I sit with someone and they sit there and they boo-hoo all of it, and even if I can pull out something, they go, okay, think about it, and they go, well, no, there's no way she'd know that, but they walk away and they think about it, and they might, you know, whether they contact me again is irrelevant. If whatever I've done in that conversation with that person, whether it's 5 minutes or 2 hours, whether they contact me again, I've helped that person in some way. Whether it's a realisation, whether it's to shift their mindset, I don't know. But I did sit with a businessman a while ago, and he was very, you know, this is a load, you know, I don't believe in all this crap. And I said, oh, you don't have to. You don't have to believe it. Right. For it to work, you don't have to believe it.
True.
And anyway, I after the meeting, I said, look, I normally don't say this, but I'm going to let you know you might have a little bit of diarrhea over the next day or two. And he looked at me, he goes, what? And I said, well, you know, we've talked about, you're going to have a shift. For some reason, you have to get a physical confirmation. Yeah. Sure enough, 2 days later, he texts me, so I can't believe I'm telling you this, Liz, but this has happened. And I said in a message, laugh out loud, so do you believe me now? He wrote back and he goes, yeah, actually I do, because the other things you said actually happened as well. But, you know, I said, excellent, good. See, some people need the physical.
Yeah, absolutely.
To get that, which is fine. And I actually enjoy meeting someone who's so against it, and then they can turn around and say, well, you know, I don't know whether I'm going to say I believed or not, but, you know, there's something in it. You know, so I'm thick-skinned. If someone says you're a load of shit, Liz, I think, well, that's your choice.
That's a choice.
That's, you know, I know what I do works. Yeah. And, you know, hopefully whatever I've said has helped you as well. But you don't have to believe me. So it's interesting.
So how do people find you in the first place? I mean, how do you get your clients?
I'm on LinkedIn. I don't advertise a lot. Most of mine is all word of mouth, really. LinkedIn's probably the only. I'm on Facebook as well, but LinkedIn's probably the only advertising I do. And it's not advertising; it's putting messages out there. And I have people contact me and say, look, the reason I'm contacting you is because what you put out there resonates with me, and I'm just curious to know how you help people.
Okay, so what sort of messages do you put out?
You know, it's just pictures with sayings. I'm very simple.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
You know, too much reading and you've lost me. But if it's something short, sharp and to the point, people will get it. And that's what my role is. I like things to be done easy and not complicated. You know, because if it's too complicated, people won't do it. And so what mine is all word of mouth. You know, I get a whole family. You know, I'll see a wife, and then the husband will come to me, and their kids, and the aunt and the uncle, and I get this whole family come together at different times, which is wonderful. You know, if I start working someone who has a business, and then their business partner will come and see me, and then some of the staff members will come and see me, or I end up in their office working with all of them. Do you know what I mean? Differently.
Okay, very interesting.
I do workshops, and a lot of the workshops are teaching people tools and techniques, things about communication. When you want to communicate, what colour you wear is huge.
Okay.
If you're given a presentation, you don't want to wear all black because black's puts up a block. There's some form of blue. You want blue in there because blue's all about communication. See? So you pick the perfect colour to wear. So, and lots of different things. The same with red. You don't want to go into a meeting in a bright red tie, because if the guy you're having a meeting with had a bad morning, that tie is just going to really piss him off.
Okay, like red rag to a bull, is it?
Yeah, okay. Red. Yeah, that's it. So you go more for, if you want to wear red, go for a deep crimson or earthly colour. That'll keep it grounded, so you don't get the anger coming up. You know, the same with my favourite colour is yellow. I love yellow, but yellow could irritate someone who's not very happy or depressed, because they go, "Oh, why are you so happy?" Do you know what I mean? So colours are really important, and just the way. So I do different workshops on stuff like that, and giving people just little tools. You know, to how to de-stress. Go for a walk at lunchtime. You know, take time out of your day. It doesn't matter how busy you are. You can give yourself 10 minutes to have a break. You know, even if you're the top of the CEO of the company and there's a major decision and you don't know what to do, go for a walk. Sit down, hug a tree and just go quiet, and the answers always come. The reason we struggle with it is because we don't stop to allow it to come.
Well, I think we don't, my opinion is we don't stop, we don't ask for guidance, and if it does come, we don't listen.
That's it. We question it.
We question it, or we just don't hear it.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, I'm reminded of this old joke of the woman who wants to win the lottery, and every day she prays and she says, "God, you know, I just want to win the lottery. I want to win the lottery." And one day there's this loud voice of God, "Well, dear, buy a bloody ticket."
That's it. That's exactly right.
You know, so okay. So if people want to contact you, what's the best way of doing that?
My mobile number is 0411 560 562. Through LinkedIn, just send me a message. That'll go to my email address.
Okay, what's your email address?
Is lizm@iprimus.com.au.
Okay. So Liz, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and hopefully you will get some interesting inquiries out of this. If nothing else, it's certainly been an interesting chat, so thank you.
But thank you very much for the opportunity and the chat to explain what I do. And it is unique, but I love what I do. And, you know, whoever's meant to contact me will, for whatever reason.
Yeah, and it certainly shows that you love what you do.
Thank you.
So thanks, Liz.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.